Oh boy, another band list! As you guys know, the band list, again, was released yesterday, and I decided to make a video just talking about the list and more so what I think the meta will be after the list. I think it's, so just pertaining to the band list, I think it's really interesting how I want to point out it was the prior list before this one, right? So the August to March list we had this prior season was a 7-month span between lists, which is the longest. I've been playing like 11 years, at least semi-competitively, to the extent where like I followed the band list, and that was, I think, the longest span I've ever seen between two band lists, because it used to be every 6 months, and that was 7 months, and then the very next one, this current one, lasted just over 2 months. Since, you know, they put Raptor at 2, it's been just over 2 months. If you look at the dates, the next list goes into effect June 11th. If you count to from the prior list to yesterday when the list was announced, it's less than 2 months even. I just think that's funny, right? We went from like having no list for months and months and months and not knowing what was going to happen to now we're getting lists more frequently, it seems. That's probably not a trend, it's probably just this one. But I think that's really good, I guess. In any case, I think this list had a pretty positive reception overall. They banned Norden. Terratop is limited. I think the grass limitation probably was the most controversial or like disagreed upon hit on the list. I think a lot of people didn't like that. And I think the Magician unlimitation was like a big mistake, considering the new Magician support coming out. Like, I have a friend who's been testing that, and like that's just like, he played against me once with it. Like, they get some really good cards coming out, and I think like with the other stuff unlimited, that's going to be like a really good deck. Haven't tested it, so I have no way to know, but I think so. But let's go over that a little bit more in depth. So Norden being banned was a change, I think, after the YCS this weekend. Like, a lot of players were asking for. Like, I was there. Like, I think I did poorly. I dropped early, but like almost every game I played, like in the main event and in side events, was like against some form of Zoo. I played Zoo. Like, most of the people I know played Zoo. Not sure. Actually, that's not necessarily true. I knew people who played other decks, but I think there was a lot of Zoo at that event. And just the Norden combo, just like, you had to have hand traps or you lost if you were going second. And so I think Norden being banned was a very a cool hit for Nats. Like, it's definitely going to change. It's going to like allow for a lot more variety in the meta. And yeah, I think overall that's a good thing. The Terratop limitation is very interesting. So I think one of the big questions about the list overall, obviously, is going to be like, is Zeus still like the best deck, and is Zeus still like a tier 1 deck, a good deck? I think limiting Terratop hurts a lot. Like, I think that's relevant because like you probably aren't playing 1/1 Terratop target number. Like, I've been thinking about it. Like, I keep being tempted to play it. Like, I'm like, oh, it's such a good card though. But like, I just think mathematically that's just incorrect. So without Terratops, that's 3 less starters you have. Like 3 less, and like, it's not just like if they had like limited tanky. Like, you have like 3 less rat access cards in your deck. You have 3 less special summon, like rat, like access cards, like Barat, because like you have your normal summon ones, like any Zoo, normal monster, rat, tanky, and then you have like your special summon ones, Barrage and Terratop, and like you wanted to see those. Going first, it's not as relevant, but like going second, like you wanted to see those, because if they have one stop, like goes your normal summon, like you need to have another like rat starter in your hand, either Terratop or Barrage, and so without Terratop, like I think that hurts the deck's like ability to push, like versatility, like I'm not sure what the right word is. Diversification of plays, that's the word. Like, you're gonna be a lot more normal summon reliant now, and if they stop your normal summon, like that's gonna hurt. People are probably gonna be playing the Predaplants to replace Terratop, is one probably trend that's gonna be happening, and that's just not that good because, like, again, the Predaplants are still reliant on your normal summon. They're arguably worse than just normal summoning a rat because A, they're extremely Scorpio is extremely vulnerable to Ghost Ash, because if they hit it with Ash, you don't get your Xe, you lost a card, it's a -1, and it's super vulnerable to Ash, whereas like a normal summon rat, like it's not very vulnerable to Ash. They can stop the Broad Bull Search, but like you still get Dryden. So the Predaplants are going to be a lot more fragile than, like, there's such a much more fragile engine than the Terratop engine was. Additionally, like, people say, well, if the Predaplants go off, you get a fusion spell, which is good, but instant fusion is not going to be that good anymore. You can still, I might still play one. I'd probably still play one instant fusion if I was playing the Predaplants, just for like an extra level 4 monster for Xing. Just it would be no different than playing Hat Tricker, like I was doing when Rat was at 2 before we had Chaka 9. But there's no Norden to summon off Instant Fusion. So Instant Fusion's a lot worse as a starter card, like going second if they Trident your rat and you used Instant Fusion, bring it back, like that's not there anymore. So like you also lost Instant Fusion as a starter. And yeah, it's like not that great. So it's not that great to search off the Predaplans. And some people are toying around with the Brilliant Fusion engine with the Predaplans. I think that's really interesting. That could be cool. But I personally don't like Brilliant Fusion in my decks. Even if the ceiling, like Brilliant Fusion helps raise the ceiling, inherently adds in like inconsistency basically. So the deck's definitely going to be weaker in several ways. Like a lot of people look at it, like take a list and then look at a deck and try to look at like how can like I replace these cards to keep the ceiling like the same and still be able to combo. And like a lot of people overlook, I think, it's not just about being able to combo, it's about like what percentage of the time can you access that combo, how much has the overall consistency of your deck been impacted, the diversification within your deck, those kind of things. And that's why ban lists hurt. Like people look at it a lot of times like a limitation of a card and say, oh, well, you can just replace it with this. Most cases, like, no, you can't. Yes, you can replace Terratop with the Predaplants, but again, you're more normal summon dependent, it's more vulnerable to certain cards, so it's not the same. That doesn't mean people shouldn't try, like, innovating with after hits on ban lists. I think that's great. I think it's great to try to keep decks alive, play around with them, but just for some serious competitive perspective, I think Zodiac will be a lot worse. But it's still alive. A lot of people are doing now the OCG combo where you just bring back Ram off Chakanine and then pop it with Trident. So like you can still do Trident Emerald, draw one, and a Broad Bull search for Whiptail with just one rat. So that's actually still pretty cool. So the deck could still do pretty well. I just think it'll be a lot worse going second. So anyway, so that's what I think about Zoo going forward. Then the grass decks, I think they are not, yeah, they're not having a good time. I'm sorry, grass players. Like, I had 3 grasses, but like mine were Euro print. I couldn't play them anyway, so like I already couldn't play grass. But like people who had like grasses, yeah, that's probably not going to be that playable going forward. Definitely, I think you'll have to play 3 left arm offering if you still want to try to play grass. Anyone who wants to try to, and left arm offering is very vulnerable to Ash. Also, even if you disregard Ash, like you have 4 grasses now instead of 6, which isn't as bad as saying, well, you have 1 instead of 3. Still, if you play left arm, you still have 4. So it's not. It could theoretically still be played. I just think factoring in those vulnerabilities like to Ash and the fact that you have physically less grasses now, like even with left arm, I think overall it won't be probably won't be a tier 1 deck. And then, yeah, so that's what I think about the Zodiac and the grass decks pertaining to the hits on the list. As for what I do think will be meta, I'm not sure. One thing I always like to do whenever there's a ban list, I like to look at meta going back in time chronologically. So, like, looking at the current meta, we have, or just recently, we had, after the YCS, we pretty much just Norden Zodiac decks. Right before that, we had expected to be, True King Dino, Pure True Draco, Draco Zoo, and then going back prior to that, what did we have before Maximum Crisis came out? We had Infernoid Grass, Paleozoic, Zoo, and some Metal Foe Zoo. Before that, before Zodiac came out, we had there was that brief period of time for like specifically ARG Hartford, in fact, where there was DDD, Metal Foe, Paleo. Was basically the meta, and prior to DDD, we had ABC. There was that 5-deck format around December with the Invasion Vengeance format. It was Metal Foe, ABC, and the 3 Toad decks, Toad Hero, Mermail, and Paleo. And then prior to that, we had the what was the set before Invasion Vengeance? The green one. I can't picture it now. Or was it blue? Oh yeah, I think it was blue. I can't remember the name. I'm completely blanking. You know, the one Blue Eyes came out. The Blue Eyes cards came out in. And at that point, we had mainly Blue Eyes, PK Fire, and Metal Foe was the meta. Metal Foe prior to getting the Thrillium and stuff. So I like to look at it that way. I like to take like the current the recent history of like the meta and just like make a list going back chronologically, saying, all right, theoretically, if we have these decks currently, and if we take these decks out of the meta due to the ban list, what came before that? So making that list like just that briefly, we have. Metal Foe, Paleozoic, DDD, Mermail, Toad Hero. We also had Invoked, which I missed, actually. while I was going through. We did have the Invoke deck, Zodiac, Grass decks, Infernoid, and yeah, that's basically what those are the decks that have been meta over the last 6 months. So like I want to go through those quickly, one by one, and just like think about possible interactions with the ban list and like recent releases we've gotten and how those decks might perform and what could possibly come back as a meta deck going forward. Rarely do like older decks come back, so that probably won't happen too much. But I think a couple of those decks definitely still have a chance to definitely contend in the upcoming meta. First, I want to check off a few that I think won't we won't be seeing again. Mermail lost Instant Fusion. I think that's big. Instant Fusion, that was probably one of the decks that could best use Instant Fusion because of Dragoons and because of they could have Bahamut Shark, so like an Instant Fusion got you a lot of advantage. They lost Instant Fusion. They were already very fragile. That's not true, but like they had a bad matchup to Zodiac. I don't think we'll be seeing Mermail too much. Toad Hero, that one's just not a real deck. It is. I just, like, that deck was such a go first deck. I never understood how that deck really, like, did well. But it topped some ARGs. It did decent. Paleo, that's, I think, definitely in people's minds. That's recently been in people's minds. So that's a deck to consider. But I think the problem with Paleo is they're going to have they have a bad matchup to Draco. If you summon Masterpiece on traps, like, they lose. Unless they're maining like Field Wipes or Kaiju cards, which for Paleo to main non-trap cards hurts their own synergy a lot. So I think Paleo might not make too much of a resurgence after this ban list. So that's some decks I think we might not see. The main decks I think we will see. I think the best deck after the ban list is Dino. That's like. I'm actually shocked that Dino didn't top Pittsburgh. There were 0 Dino decks in top 32 at Pittsburgh. As we know, it was 32 Zoo decks. But I think Dino, I think that deck plays really well going first or second. Like, it can play through. It's an interesting deck because sometimes it's very vulnerable to the right disruption, the right stops, and other times it can play through very well. Like, if Lithogasm, I think that's the name, the Earth True King gets striked, that can hurt the deck a lot, but like if they still have another True King live, which they sometimes do, or just Diagram, like they can still play through. And going first, a lot of times if you Ghost Ogre or Ash Blossom their Diagram, they brick, but they can't play through that. But a lot of times they can, so it's interesting. But I think ceiling wise, I think Dino is just a really strong deck with the True King cards. That I think simply if we look at that Zodiac took a huge hit, both in ceiling and in diversification and versatility, and then we look at the Grass took a huge hit. I think Dino just remains. I think will be one of the best decks opening into the format. Then there's the Pure Draco deck, another deck that was one of the couple that was expected to be one of the top decks at Pittsburgh. It couldn't make. I don't know. It seems very fair to me. I don't think it seems like that good of a deck, but I could be wrong. I haven't tested against it enough to really say. It could very well be it didn't do well at Pittsburgh because one of the problems with that deck was it couldn't really main hand traps because it ran Card of Demise, which is one of its strongest cards, so it couldn't really not main Card of Demise either. So basically, effectively, it couldn't play hand traps in the main. And because of just how Zoo and Norden combo heavy Pittsburgh was, I think it could be that deck just couldn't compete, but that deck very well could be a really strong deck, so maybe in the new format. So I think those are definitely decks to watch. The Draco, I think we knew the Draco decks were going to be good. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if part of Konami's motivation for this ban list was literally saying, oh, the new stuff isn't the best. We need to make the new stuff the best because we always want our current product to be the best. So they felt if we hit Norden, the Zoo will still be good, but the Draco decks will be best. So that could be part of what part of their motivation was. And I do think those will be some of the best decks. So True King Dino, Pure True Draco. And then, as I said, when I finished going through those other decks, because like I said, going through that list, Paleo I think has the bad matchup to the Draco decks. Toad Hero won't come back. Mermail lost Instant Fusion. I don't think that'll come back. Metal Foe, DDD, ABC. ABC is just a solid, strong deck. That's even through Zodiac format. Like I knew people who were still playing that all the way through Zodiac format up to Maximum Crisis and did fairly well with it. And I think that that deck will be a good gauge of like how the ceiling of like the current like the Draco decks compares to like those older decks ceiling, because like ABC was absolutely a solid deck. When it came out, it was the best deck for like a couple weeks before Age of Vengeance came out. And so if ABC like doesn't come back, that means like, I mean, I guess we know the Draco decks have like a higher ceiling, right? So I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see if ABC comes back. I think it's a strong, solid deck that, unlike Paleo, which has bad matchups, or Mermail which lost Instant Fusion, I think ABC will be one to watch for coming back. As will maybe be Metalfoe. Theoretically, Metalfoe still with Zodiac had a pretty high ceiling by playing Zodiac, and logically, if it should come back, maybe, other than the fact that it lost Kieran, which was a huge hit to it. And so I think a lot of people, we still don't know, like, Metalfoe, it was interesting because Metalfoe did some, like, it did fairly well at a couple events throughout the format, but it didn't do, like, it didn't perform super well. So it'll be interesting to see how Metalfoe, we still don't quite know how it is without Kieran, I think. I feel like we'll have to see how it does. That could be a deck in the upcoming meta, or it might not be. And then DDDs. Theoretically, again, going back chronologically, DDDs should remain. Like, it didn't lose anything. The other decks did lose stuff, and so, like, conceptually, it should maybe come back as a meta deck, but I think looking at things theoretically like that just doesn't always work. I think just looking at that deck, even though it did good at ARG Hartford, it's just fragile. I've been playing that deck a little bit even through the current format. It had a bad matchup to Zodiac. I think it will still have a bad matchup to even the Zodiac, the next iteration of Zodiac without Norden. And I just think DDD was overall a very fragile deck, and people just didn't quite realize how fragile it was before it came out. I don't know, maybe fragile is not the right word, but I don't expect DDD to see that too much. So overall, in summary, I think the decks to watch will be True King Dino, Pure Draco, maybe Metalfoes, and ABC. Oh, by the way, Invoked, that's another deck I think a lot of people will probably look at because it's fairly recent, and I think a lot of people still look at that deck as something to consider. I've played that deck 20 times in tournament. I've never lost to it. I just have a hard time like viewing that deck as like a solid, like a good choice to play. The engines always seem so fair to me. I never found any of the Invoke decks to really seem that like good. I don't know. I don't think that'll be a good choice. But that could just be my personal experience. It could be skewed, maybe. Maybe it's a better deck than it has seemed to me in the past. But, again, I really think Dino True King, Pure Draco, maybe ABCs and Metalfoes would be the decks to watch. Just by like method of like exclusion, like checking off the other decks. And Zodiac. Actually, that kind of was implied, and like I feel like I didn't really address that. I do think Zodiac might not. Time will tell whether it will remain a good deck. I said the exact same thing in my last video after the last banned list. So like Zodiac absolutely remained a good deck after the last one. So maybe that's the answer right there. But I think that's what our meta will look like. True King Dino, Pure Draco, Zodiac, and maybe some ABC and Metalfoe as like some other decks. And maybe some of those other decks too. We'll see. DDD, Paleo, you never know. You never know what we'll see. Maybe grass decks will still be in there too. Anyway, this video is getting a little long, so I'm going to wrap it up. I feel like I kind of was just rambling there, so sorry about that. But if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Shout out to Card Guyz and all of our sponsors. Ophidian Accessories has some cool stuff coming out soon. The team has a new website launching soon, so a lot of cool stuff in the works for us. I hope you guys like all that once it hits. I'm sure Kyle will link some links pertaining to that stuff in the description for the video. And yeah, thanks for watching. Goodbye.